Welcome to Uncle's Channel. Thanks for watching today, and I've just gotten back from watching the Garfield movie at our local theater. I got an email for an invitation for an early screening. I don't think it comes out till like Wednesday or Thursday this week. I'm not exactly sure, but if you go early, you actually get a little Garfield squishy here as well. Let's open that up here. There we go, guys, and it actually got a really satisfying squish to it as well. So there you can see a little Garfield squishy if you go early, and they may have some at the actual showing as well. But overall, I was very satisfied with the movie. I think it's a great continuation of the Garfield lore, the Garfield story, the Garfield franchise. We're going to break the entire movie down here in another episode of Matt's Movie Reviews. Shh. Now, first off, I will say the movie reminded me a great deal of Emperor's New Groove, one of my favorite Disney movies. It came out like maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, somewhere in that range, but it's a fantastic Disney movie. If you've never seen it, one of the absolute greatest ones out there. But I really enjoyed the writing in that particular movie, and the writing does transfer over very similar to some of the jokes in the Garfield movie. Garfield movie is more slapstick, and it's not as good of a movie as Emperor's New Groove, but I was going to compare it. That's what it reminds me most of, because Garfield and his relationship with his father Vic remind me a lot of the Kuzco and Pacha relationship in Emperor's New Groove. And there's also a white cat named Jinx in this movie. It reminds me a lot of Yzma. And so there's a lot of similarities between the two. I don't think there's anything lifted or anything, stolen, nothing like that. I just think there's some, callbacks or at least reminiscence between the two films. Now, when the movie starts off, I will say the first third of the movie is probably the weakest of the film. It's almost like in the first piece of the movie here, they tried to cram in every little bit of Garfield throwback or a Garfield trope that they could into one single section. They put in the jokes about hating Mondays, overeating, the weight gain, going to the vet, spider hating, kidding around or picking on Odie. Pretty much every Garfield trope that you can think of is sort of squished into the first third of the film, which I don't really have a problem with because, it is Garfield. You want to see those things. But it's really like they try to just sort of squish it all in the first part in order to get it over with to continue off the story in the later two-thirds of the movie. But by doing this, it does make the first part of the film feel a little bit more, disjointed or sort of just cluttered than the rest of the movie. However, you do get Baby Garfield in the first bit of the movie, and there is nothing more adorable than Baby Garfield, like the opening scene of him adopting John, as he calls it in the film. A wonderful piece of cinematic history, and if you love Garfield, you love cats, you can't help but probably tear up a little bit when Garfield first meets John. A great scene there. Now, the next main part of the film, Vic is going to be introduced, and Vic is going to be Garfield's father, who has never been in any Garfield comics up to this point. This is the introduction of Vic, and I really do hope that he stays around from pretty much here on out, because he's a fantastic character in every way. Samuel L. Jackson portrays him, and he does just a great job with the voice acting behind Vic. And also, as a side note, Chris Pratt, who did Garfield. I know a lot of people had some reservations about Chris Pratt, but I feel like he really does nail the sarcastic, sort of deadpan tone of Garfield, very similar to like Lorenzo Music back in the 80s. And so I feel like Chris Pratt also did a good job. All the voice acting is actually pretty top tier for the movie. But anyway, back to the main story here. Garfield and Odie are kidnapped from their home by a group of henchmen who are working for an evil cat named Jinx. And Garfield's father, Vic, comes to the rescue and saves Garfield and Odie. However, once he saves them, Jinx, the evil cat, comes out and confronts them. And it turns out that Jinx and Vic have a history. It goes way back. And they used to be partners in crime. And they were robbing a milk farm at one point. And when they were robbing the milk farm, the police showed up, or the pound showed up rather. And they kidnapped Jinx, and Vic was able to escape. And Vic did not help rescue Jinx from the pound. And she spent years there. And she holds that resentment against Vic and says she will only let this grudge go and will only start leaving him and his son Garfield alone if he and Garfield and Odie go to the local milk farm and steal 1 quart of milk for every single day that Jinx spent in prison, which is going to equivalent to more than 1,000 quarts of milk. Basically, an entire truckload full of milk. And so this is where the main storyline begins. Basically, Garfield, Odie, and Vic are going to start trying to break into this milk farm in order to steal the milk to get Jinx off their back. And that's sort of the overarching story of the movie. And we're going to get more characters here in a second, but I'm not going to spoil anything past this. But this just essentially gets the main plot line or the main conflict in action for the overall movie. Now, Vic and Jinx are great characters and very well written in their own right. However, there's another character we're going to introduce that's just a gem of a character for the Garfield franchise. And I don't think he's anywhere else in any of the comics or anything. And he's Otto, an old show bull for the milk company that they're trying to rob. And Otto is going to try to assist them with their robbery, and I won't give away any spoilers as to why or anything like that, but he's going to be trying to help Garfield, Odie, and Vic here. And the interaction between the four of them, especially with Otto in the picture, is just pretty much comedic genius here. And at one point, Otto is helping to sort of map out the robbery of the milk factory, and for Vic and Garfield and Odie all have a role here, and he gives each of them nicknames. And he gives Vic the nickname of like Bullfrog, Odie the nickname of like some sort of majestic chipmunk or something, and he gives Garfield Garfield's nickname of a roadkill possum, just simply roadkill for short. And the interactions of Garfield and Otto here trying to argue back and forth about the nickname and sort of, the discussions and the meanings behind everything and behind the possum is just very well written. It's very comedic. And then they go on beyond that, continue with the joke and do like a multi-minute segment here about the three nicknamed individuals robbing the factory with images of the roadkill possum, the bullfrog, and the chipmunk. And it's just like they took the joke and they just sort of stretched it out as far as they could. And it does seem like they might run the joke into the ground, but it's like they knew the exact limits of how far to take this joke. And every bit of it is just comedic genius, like I said earlier. And there are several instances when Otto is in the picture, especially, where they're able to have a great joke. They know it's a great joke on their hands, and they know exactly how far to push it before it gets too old and wears out. And they take it to the very far limit of that line. And that's something that Garfield really did a lot back in the old 90s show or the 80s show, back when, Garfield and Friends used to watch growing up. And I don't know, this to me feels like the classic Garfield that I truly know and love. As much as I enjoy the well-written comedic timing of, the dialogue between him and Otto or Vic and all of that, and that's the sarcasm that I truly do love in Garfield. Garfield really does have a slapstick side to him as well, and you can trace that back all the way into the early comics, to early TV shows, some of the TV specials, some of the last movies. Garfield very much has a slapstick feel about it, and that's not all crammed into the first third of the movie. Some of the slapstick does continue out through the entire film, and I wouldn't expect it not to. It's just simply not my favorite type of Garfield humor, but I also understand that is very much Garfield at its core, and so you sort of have to have both of them in order to construct a good Garfield movie. And so the slapstick is obviously going to appeal more to a younger audience, but that's not to say that the older audience can't enjoy it. It's just simply the older audience is going to enjoy more of the dialogue, the breaking of the fourth walls, things like that. And, the slapstick is still there. And I feel like as an overall, it all comes together to symbolize Garfield or encapsulate Garfield very well. And the movie also drops plenty of Easter eggs in it. And that's sort of assumed at this point. Anytime you pull a old franchise out from the 80s or the 90s and bring it to current day, you're going to put tons of Easter eggs in there, like the Mario movie or the Turtles movies or the Ghostbusters movies. You're always going to have to put these Easter eggs in there. And they really do cram it full in this at the same time. Like at the very beginning, Garfield, where he's very first seen next to the dumpster is a little baby Garfield. The date on the dumpster is the same date that the comic strip first premiered in the newspaper. Jim Davis's name is dropped multiple times. There's like a restaurant or a store, his name on it. Also, like at one point, one of the security guards said something like Jiminy Davis or something like that. So like Jiminy Crickets or whatever. So it does have some Easter eggs throughout. There's one Easter egg I was really hoping for that I did not see. And if you see it, please let me know in the comments down below. But there was always the U.S. Acres. Orson and Roy and Sheldon, all of them in the cartoon had their own little segment. There's an entire farm in this movie here, and they never once do any callback to U.S. Acres. That would have been like the perfect time to do it. I mean, it was literally set up perfect. All you had to do is like show Orson in the background or Roy in the background, and I don't know. They just simply didn't go for that. There were just so many opportunities for U.S. Acres to make an appearance, and it never happened inside the film. But also at the very end of the movie, you get some extra Easter eggs. I'm not going to go through every Easter egg I saw, but at the end, when the credits are rolling, they actually have like little, screenshots of different characters from the movie drawn in the animation style from the 90s cartoon. And I don't know, for a old school Garfield fan, I really did appreciate that. But overall, I feel like the Garfield movie really does sort of pull in all aspects of Garfield, the slapstick side, the sarcastic side, the well-written side, and also bringing in old fans and new fans at the same time, and giving us a great lore here with Vic and Jinx and all of that. And I really do feel like the movie as an overall is a good film, and I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. And if you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend going to see it. And if you aren't really feeling it like in the first maybe like third of the movie or quarter of the movie, give it time, because I promise the movie does get better, and it does have some really iconic characters and some really iconic lines as you progress through the film. But like I said, 7 out of 10. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.